Hi, this is Roger Marsh for Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk. Excited to share that this entire week of programs will be centered around the importance of romance and marriage. Culture tells us that Valentine's Day is the single opportunity to let your spouse know how much they mean to you. But here at Family Talk, we want to affirm that a marriage can be filled with a lifetime of romance, but it takes time and effort, both from husband and wife, to reach that point. Each day this week on the program, we'll have broadcasts dedicated to empowering you and your spouse to fight for your marriage and hopefully bring the romance and love of Valentine's Day to your everyday lives. Head over to our website at drjamesdobson.org to join us for our free 10 Days of Romance series. And every day for 10 days, you'll receive insights on intimacy from Dr. James Dobson and best-selling author Shaunti Feldhahn. Again, you can join in at drjamesdobson.org.
Today on Family Talk.
Is your marriage on the rocks? Are fighting and arguing a daily occurrence? Do you feel distant from your spouse at all? Well, today's program is for you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Family Talk with your host, psychologist and best-selling author, Dr. James Dobson. I'm Roger Marsh, and I pray today's program will be deeply impactful for you and will help you repair your broken relationship with your spouse. Here now is Dr. Dobson to introduce today's guests.
Today, we have as our guests in the studio, Danny and Sheri Silk, to talk about building and maintaining healthy relationships. They talk about how you can create them and maintain them and recreate them when they've been damaged. And their Keep Your Love On conferences are being carried on all over the world, and we want to talk a little bit about that too. So, Danny and Sheri, with that introduction, let's begin. It's a pleasure to have the two of you here.
It is
Thanks for having us.
unbelievable to be here.
Yeah, such an honor.
You have a master's degree in social work.
Yes, sir.
And you got that from Cal State University in Sacramento, where you guys live. And you're the author of 5 books, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Did Sheri co-author any of them?
She participated in all the stories throughout each of those
The
books.
stories.
Yes.
She lived them, didn't she? Well, the latest book is Keep Your Love On, and we need an explanation for that one. Sheri and Danny have been married for 32 years,
That's
1984.
Yep.
And you have 3 grown children.
Yes.
And 3 grandchildren.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I want to start by talking about marriage today. That is our theme, family life and marriage. In fact, Sheri, you were a pastor of family life at your church. What church is
It's
that?
Bethel Church in Redding, California.
And you were there for how many years?
We were there for
About 14 years.
You folks are deeply committed to the institution of marriage.
Yes.
Does it break your heart, Danny, what's happening to it?
Yeah, I think the public image of marriage is really misrepresented. I think that there's a lot of successes going on. There's a great book called The Good News About Marriage. Yeah. And it's written by a statistician. She heard this stat that says half of all marriages end in divorce. And she started trying to find where's that coming from. And she traced this all the way back to the United States Census. That bureau was trying to communicate that it's a projection, that if things continued into the 70s as they were, we would end up with that. She said the closest it's ever been was like 34%, and it's generally more like 28%.
But even with that, some things are changing. And,
for sure.
Marriage is deteriorating, and people are having difficulty in their relationships.
It's one of the hardest things you'll do in your life, besides raise children.
Yeah. You guys know that, don't you?
We
from
do.
Personal experience.
We have a firsthand knowledge of this.
Yes.
And you're willing to talk about that.
Absolutely. It's
All
part
right.
of our...
Now, everybody out there in the listening audience, pay attention here, because frequently we have people who are here representing a commitment to marriage, and they tell everybody else how to do it. Shirley and I are among those that feel that way. I don't have all the answers, but we've made a good marriage. We're made for each other. But it doesn't always work that way. And as I have read the prep for today, getting acquainted with you guys, I think I read that a counselor or a psychologist told you before you were married that you shouldn't do it.
Well,
Yeah.
We found
Is that an overstatement, or did that happen?
The Taylor-Johnson compatibility assessment.
Yes.
That was our pastor did that and then reviewed it with us. Those were our 2 premarital counseling episodes. 12 years after we had been married, we were at his house and we were bickering about something, and he throws his head back and says, "That reminds me of that Post-it note that was on your assessment. Remember that?" And I looked at Sheri. I looked back at him. Said, "What Post-it note?" He goes, "The note that came back on your Taylor-Johnson compatibility assessment. Remember that?" "No, I don't remember that." "I didn't tell you about that?" "Tell us about what?" Now both of us are leaning forward on our chair, like, "Tell us about what, Bill?" And he goes, "That's weird." He said, "For 10 years, I sent that assessment in, and I would get it back. I would open it. I would go over it with a couple. Back and forth for 10 years. I got yours back. I opened it, and there was a Post-it note. This is from a psychologist. It says, 'Bill, do whatever you can to stop this marriage.'"
No kidding.
But he never told us.
I said,
Well,
"No, Bill, you didn't tell me about that." No, there was no note.
He really owed it to you to let you know what you were getting into.
Yeah, that
What
was-
was there about your personalities that he considered incompatible?
Just the measurements of those assessments where you would come together in
Yes.
agreement on perspective or needs or affections or different things. Man, we were just pegged everywhere. We were pegged in the opposite direction. And we're very different people.
He used to describe us as, I see Danny running backwards as fast as he can. I see Sheri running forward as fast as she can. We just had very different styles. Grew up in really hard family life, lots of divorce, and Danny and I share this, but between his mom and dad and my mom and dad and stepdad who raised me, there was 15 marriages. That rolled into what was normal. And even though we had gotten saved and were in church and all that, we lived this life of divorce and fighting. And I have 6 brothers, and survival of the fittest was the deal. You just came out swinging or you're just going to die in that environment. And Danny was raised by a single mom who was more passive and not a great communicator. So Danny learned a really passive communication style, and I learned a very aggressive one. So those two together, not a good combo, and we worked it out. But it took years.
Did you fight a lot before you were
We did.
married?
No, I don't remember. We only dated for 3 months and then got engaged and then got married 3 months later. So
There wasn't much time
there
to fight.
wasn't lots of time to fight.
We did have a week on the houseboat that was given to us, on the houseboat on the lake, and on the 3rd day.
On our honeymoon.
On our honeymoon, we came home. We had a whole week. We came home. We got off that lake, being trapped on that boat together on the 3rd day of our honeymoon.
Do you know how often that occurs? Do you know that the honeymoon is often a very unpleasant time of conflict, and you learn things that in all the dating experience you had no idea of?
Yeah.
So what did you do? I mean, was the first year stormy?
We got pregnant 3 months after our wedding and had a baby about a week from our first wedding anniversary.
Was the first year stormy? It was more like the first
12 years.
I say 10, he says 12. I think we started getting better about 10 years in.
Yeah.
What kept you together, Sheri?
I think what helped me is I did not want to repeat what I saw in my family. I knew that we had to change. Like, this was my watch for my family. This is whatever I'm doing right now is going to roll into the next generation with my kids. So we just stood the line, and when I was in trouble and felt isolated and hurt, I would purposely go to people I knew that would help me, not people I knew that would back up how I was feeling and give me an excuse to leave. So I chose to go to good counsel. I got lots of people in my life that helped me stay in the game. If you want to learn how to play basketball, you got to get on the court. You can't sit on the bench. So we just forged in and played the game. And
were there times when you felt like it was over?
I think both of us felt trapped at times. Like, we're Christians, you're not supposed to get a divorce. What are we going to do? We didn't talk about divorce ever. Every night my parents were yelling at each other, let's just get a divorce. And
was alcohol involved?
In my parents?
Yes.
Yeah, all in my family. Drugs and alcohol. And Danny, I remember him just being really depressed, just being sad and sitting by himself in the backyard.
What were you thinking, Danny?
There were many thoughts that I had in that different backyards. I was scared. I was scared that I had ruined my life. I was scared that this was never going to get any better, and that we were never going to connect, and that we were simply going to endure each other. So I did. I remember planning out, what does it look like to have a divorced home, and how are we going to do all this? And I planned it out in my head 100 times, but I never believed that was the right thing to do.
So it was really your theology and your faith that kept you hanging in there.
Oh, very much. I would have to ask the Lord to let me go, and he wasn't about to. And he surrounded me with amazing people who I so respected their input in my life that it caused me to humble myself again. Yeah. Danny, have you humbled yourself yet? Oh, is there any other counsel besides that?
Did you pray a lot during that time?
Some of my best prayer years. Yeah. It was constant because our disconnect and our tension was pretty regular. We had brief moments of connection, but most of the time we were on guard with each other.
See if you can get us to the core of what the problem was from this perspective. You've already said you were incompatible by your temperaments. Beyond that, why couldn't you make it work? Why were you in such turmoil with one another? Have you figured that out?
Well, it's an ongoing, growth area for us. I think because we're so different, we need different things. But I remember about 15 years into our marriage, Sheri went in for some counseling, and she came back, and I said, "So how'd it go?" And she said, "It was really good. I had discovered that I have never felt protected by you." Mm-hmm. And I said, "By me? How did I get in on your counseling?" And I was so offended and just couldn't believe it, because I thought she was the bad guy and I was the victim most of our relationship. It never dawned on me that protecting the bad guy is something you do. But it was because that was my grid, was I had turned Sheri into the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And I gave myself permission to not do my job as a husband. And so when she would get upset or she would get angry, I would protect everybody around her. I'd never even one time thought about protecting her in our relationship. As soon as my perspective changed from I need to protect myself and other people from her to I need to move towards her, I need to hear her, I need to see her, everything began to change because her anxiety began to drop, and I got to see a different woman than I'd ever had up to that point.
We said earlier that your degree is in social work, so you will already know this, but many people do not know. I could have told you what the core problem was before you shared that. Mm-hmm. I asked the question already knowing, not because I read about you or know that, but because it is the standard conflict between a man and woman. A woman has this passion to be loved, I mean, it is her entire life to feel like this man values her, loves her, will fight for her, care for her, and that he's thankful for her. And if she doesn't feel that, there's this ache inside, right, Sheri?
Yes.
And this great longing to be loved and cared for. It's put into a woman's spirit.
Yeah.
I think it's part of God's design for a woman that she needs to be cared for and loved. The man usually doesn't have a clue about that.
Yeah.
It's so foreign to how he thinks that he doesn't get it at all. And like you, he doesn't think it has anything to do with him.
Yep.
She's just mad all the time or depressed all the time or unhappy over something or other. I'm not responsible for her happiness. It's just a whole different way of life. And I've heard it 1,000 times.
Yeah, me too.
And we're talking to people right now who are saying, that applies to us.
Yeah.
This is me. I've never felt that there was anybody that really cared for me. I have that ache inside. And the husband gets lost in his work. And he's, finding satisfaction in being successful in his business if he is. And if he's not, then he's got another problem. And he never recognizes that there are two parts to this equation.
Yeah.
And we really can, with proper counseling, as apparently you all were getting snippets of, you were starting to recognize that there's a formula here that can be handled better than we're doing it.
I pinpoint that as the day that things turned around for us was the day I got the revelation that it's my job to protect her. Never saw it, never saw it in any part of my family. So every male I was ever around was a consumer, or just very, very self-focused, never strengthening the family, never investing. Once I got saved, I had these men in my life who were showing me I just didn't close the gap because they didn't have a wife like Sheri. They had these, gentle, quiet, careful ladies, who were, seemed to be respecting their husband. I had this, I had a chair and a whip, and I had this lion. And
is that you, Sheri?
Your life would be so boring without me.
Totally. Did you ever try to explain this ache to Danny?
It took me a while to figure out what was going on inside me as well. I shared that I have lots of brothers and unsupervised time and a bunch of craziness going on in my family. And so it was always my job to protect myself, always. And because I have more of a dominant personality, it's loud. The way I would protect myself would be loud, yelling or carrying on or being upset. And so he would distance himself from that for good reason.
Yeah, that'd drive a man away.
And that would
really
make me feel more alone and more up to me to protect myself and misunderstood. And then you don't really know what I'm trying to say. And when he learned that it was his job to move towards me, I no longer had to be all upset anymore. I wasn't bringing that intensity to my conversation, to my needs, because he moved toward me. And so there was two things going on. I had to learn how to calm myself down and not attack and get in touch with what need I was having at the time and express myself. And he had to learn to not shrink back, but move toward me and partner with me.
I said Shirley and I have made it work, and we've had an absolutely wonderful relationship. I love her today as much as I did, or more than when I first married her. But we had to work through some of the things you're talking about. Didn't know till we got married that she had low self-esteem. Her father was an alcoholic. She had never been loved by men. She had an enormous capacity to be loved.
Yeah.
And, so we had what I call the talk. It would be sometime during the first 5 years where Shirley would begin to feel that I didn't love her enough. And she would hurt we would talk till 2 o'clock in the morning and get it all talked out, and then we'd be okay for 6 weeks or a month or however long, and we'd have the talk again. So all of that comes with getting to know the opposite sex and understanding how they're different from us and what they need. I would bet, Danny, that you needed some things from Sheri that she didn't know to give you.
Yeah, and we still have the talk about those things as well. Like, I need to feel admired, I need to feel respected and trusted. Probably most deeply, I need to feel trusted by her, that that she would offer me that vulnerability that she was hiding with doing everything herself and taking care of herself. And so I never had the opportunity to step into that place of feeling trusted by her because she was doing my job because I wasn't.
So in essence, your marriage was a blind date. You did not know each other at all.
And
especially since you only went together for 3 months.
And didn't have a clue really by seeing a similar dynamic as ours. Most of the couples that were around us were just classic, dominant male, more submissive, passive female. It seemed like it was everywhere. And whenever you saw a dominant female, it was headed for the rocks, It was a tough situation.
But I'll tell you something you now know. When the doors were closed, they were having the talk too.
Yeah.
You can bet they were having the talk. Because everybody has the talk.
Everybody has to have the talk.
Yeah.
I don't read your mind.
Yeah. Well, we're off to a good start. Our time's almost gone, but these are some things that you all discovered together. We really do need to end by saying that you figured it out and you have a wonderful relationship now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
And you love each other.
Absolutely.
And it's going to work.
We think it's going to
Forever.
work.
There's
hope.
Well, that's a little tentative, Danny.
I know. You need to bring the fire on
it's
that one,
only been
honey.
32 years. We think it's going to work.
Well, you make it work. Shirley and I never gave each other the latitude to say it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, there was never a time when I said, I don't think I can live with you. I don't think you're the one for me. Never. We never did that, because once you do that, you wound the other person, and then it becomes harder to put it back together.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that this conversation has been helpful to some couples that are going through the same things. I want to say to you all in closing that what you're experiencing more than likely is common to man and woman. And there are some time-honored solutions. There are some ways to come to terms with it. There are ways to inform each other or understand each other better. And counseling with a person who really knows what they're doing can be very helpful. You mentioned Sheri going for counseling. Did you?
We never actually spent much time in official counseling as much as I was going through my master's degree, and I was getting counseled just by becoming more and more aware of me and people. Yeah. And then we just had some really great friends.
I did go to a Bible study, codependent kind of group for a year. I went every week, and they were just friends walking through life.
And that was helpful to you.
Mm-hmm. Very helpful.
Boy, I wish we had time to even discuss your book, Keep Your Love On. We've really got to get to that. And if you will be back with us, we'll start with that book and what it is you're saying to people along the lines of what we talked about.
That'd be great.
That'd be great.
The book is available where?
It's available online, Amazon, lovingonpurpose.com. Anywhere you could get a book, go get it.
Well, thanks for being our guests and for being willing to let people see the unpleasant side of your relationship. You can't help somebody if you're not willing to talk about the issues that you have experienced and help them to come to terms with it. Blessings to you both.
Thank you, Dr. Dobson.
We will pick up right where we left off next time.
You've been listening to a conversation featuring Dr. James Dobson and Danny and Sheri Silk here on Family Talk. Head over to today's broadcast page at drjamesdobson.org to learn more about the Silks ministry, Loving on Purpose. Once you're there, you'll also find out how you can sign up for their marriage conferences and learn about their popular book, Keep Your Love On. You'll find all this information and more at drjamesdobson.org. Then go to today's broadcast tab. As we near the end of Romance Week here on Family Talk, make sure to request your free copy of our ebook titled Regain the Passion in Your Marriage by going to drjamesdobson.org/marriage. We trust this will be a supportive resource for you and your spouse as you look to revive the fire in your marriage. Again, head over to drjamesdobson.org/marriage to request your free copy of the ebook called Regain the Passion in Your Marriage, and do so before Romance Week ends. Thanks for being with us for today's broadcast, and make sure you join us again tomorrow for the conclusion of Dr. Dobson's interview with Danny and Sheri Silk. That's right here on Family Talk. I'm Roger Marsh. Thanks for listening.
Family Talk is not associated with Focus on the Family.